Welcome to In the Envelope, an awards podcast. I am your host, Jack Smart, awards editor at Backstage. I'm here to give you a front row seat to the Emmys, Oscars, SAG, and Tonys races. Who is in the running? What makes an award-worthy performance? And what are the secrets to giving one? These intimate, inspirational conversations with some of today's most talented stars provide you, dear listener, the kind of craft and career advice that could win you a statue of your own, and maybe, just maybe, a tantalizing glimpse in the envelope.
What is the service? What is the bigger reason why we're doing this in a way that really is selfless, that really is about something that's bigger, that's connected to something bigger, and really connecting with that.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to welcome today's co-banterer. Can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I don't know what to say exactly. Don't have as many accolades, but okay. I will say my name is Ori.
Yes, she's Backstage's first In the Envelope intern.
Yes, and
that's your title.
Yeah, that is my title.
Do you like working at Backstage?
I love it.
And you get to do, I hope that it was helpful for you to come into the podcast recording studio the other day.
Yes, it was.
To see the kind of inner workings of how that goes.
Yes, it was great.
We had Ori sit in on a session. I'm not going to reveal the name of that person because that episode will come out later. But for today's episode, we're featuring someone who, you know her work.
Yes.
Which is partly why I've asked you in today.
Yes.
We have Laverne Cox on the podcast today.
We do.
Are you excited to hear it? I haven't really told you anything about it.
I'm very excited.
Well, here's what, I don't know if I told you. This is a long one.
Yeah? How
Laverne
long?
and I sat down for it's over an hour. It's definitely an hour 20, maybe an hour 25.
That's great.
Depending on how much we edit. But it's worth it. I don't think we're going to cut much. We dove deep. So you know her from Orange.
I do know her from Orange is the New Black. That's the first time I had ever heard of her, seen her before. But obviously since then, she's been
everywhere.
Literally everywhere.
Yeah. Did you know she's a Daytime Emmy?
I didn't know that.
For her special that she produced. Yeah. She's the first trans person to have a Daytime Emmy.
Good
I know.
For her.
It's one of her many, many, many firsts. Laverne is very much a trailblazer for
She's going to be a legend.
LGBT
she is
movement.
A legend. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, she's still breaking through. I remember she was on the cover of Time magazine before that was a thing. That was a big turning point. And she's been nominated for 3 Emmys for Orange is the New Black.
That's amazing.
Where she plays Sophia Bursett.
That's
Sophia
right.
Bursett. I think that's right.
Yes,
yes,
it is.
She's sort of like the hairdresser at the prison.
She is the hairdresser, the very, very resourceful hairdresser who makes it happen.
Yeah, cool.
Yes.
Yeah, and she goes through quite some painful journeys on that show, and it was cool to hear about that in the context of the painful journey that Laverne herself has been on. You'll hear in this interview. She has been through a lot, and I was very grateful to her to kind of bare her soul. And for those of you who study acting, truly any acting technique, pretty much all of the acting techniques out there get mentioned in this interview. She's very technical. She's very much a student. What worth mentioning is Orange is the New Black was one of the first original series that kind of put Netflix on the map. And it just ended.
I actually forgot about that. And I do remember seeing the posters for Orange is the New Black.
I mean, that was a crazy diverse show. It still is. But I think it was at the dawn of this movement of getting more diverse faces in front of the camera, behind the camera.
Netflix really owes it to Orange is the New Black now that we think about it.
Totally.
Extremely diverse, lots of representation for Black women, for gay women, for trans women.
Completely. And the fact that it's still getting Emmy recognition that's hard for any show to do. So It's a great show. I don't think you need to have seen every single episode of that show to understand what we're talking about in this interview, because we did focus more on acting craft stuff. But let's get to it, Ori. Thank you for joining
Of course, anytime.
Me on the podcast. Mm-hmm. Anytime?
Yes.
Hey, are you ready? Yes, you, listener. Are you ready to take the advice and the inspiration you've heard here in today's interview and use it in your own acting career? Is it something maybe you've always considered doing? Are you at the very beginning of your acting career? Are you well into your acting career and you're a fan of this podcast and you're ready to take those next steps? Backstage is here for you. This podcast is brought to you by Backstage, and what we are offering listeners to this podcast is a free 30-day trial. That's right. We are giving you 30 days completely free to try out Backstage. All you need to do is go to checkout, backstage.com/subscribe, and enter the code ENVELOPE. That's right. If you enter the code ENVELOPE at checkout, ENVELOPE, that's how you spell envelope, you get 30 free days on backstage.com. Browse our thousands of casting notices. Learn why it's the world's #1 casting platform. If you are an actor and you haven't signed up yet for Backstage, I don't know what to tell you. Get on it. Award-winning actress, producer, and activist Laverne Cox just received her 3rd Guest Actress Emmy nod for Jenji Kohan's female prison drama, Orange is the New Black. As the first openly transgender performer to be nominated for a Primetime Emmy, the first openly trans woman to win a Daytime Emmy for her special, Laverne Cox Presents, The T-Word, and Broadcast TV's first trans lead in CBS's Doubt, Laverne has been blazing trails since her early days dancing in Mobile, Alabama, and studying acting in New York City. We are honored to welcome Laverne Cox to the podcast.
Are we recording now? Are we in?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Are we in? Okay. Okay. I'm like, have we started?
Welcome.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm having a challenging day.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Life on life's terms. The great thing, though, I thought today, I had a moment of thinking, should I cancel? And I said, I don't like canceling. And then I thought, what's great about this is what Brad Calcaterra, one of my acting teachers, would say, what Susan Batson, another of my acting teachers, would say, Kimberly Harris. Most of my acting teachers would say, use it. And so since we're here at Backstage talking to young actors, that the thing about an emotional crisis is as emotionally devastating as it is, as devastating to the nervous system as it has been for me today. It is. I literally was having a moment today. I was like, oh my God, I need to play like Lady Macbeth right now, or I need to play like something really intense, because like my life is like, today I need so it really is gold when you are going through something, and then that is when we should be tracking what's going on and getting really, really curious, if we can, to monitor it, because these are the things we may need to bring up,
rather than shut down.
The shutdown is not useful for the actor. Finding a way to live in whatever the sensations are, because they're really just sensations. To live in that will be very useful information.
Sure. Like I remember I had an old theater teacher who used to say in rehearsals, when you're sick or when you're having a really rough emotional day, that is actually a great day to come to rehearsal, because it's about living in that character and doing the part in a variety of different circumstances.
Human beings have good days. Human beings have bad days. And our work as actors is to create walking, talking, multidimensional human beings. And multidimensional human beings have bad days and good days. And
you have a lot going on.
Thank God. But then also it's like self-care.
Self-care. I was going to say, like, you keeping an eye on your work-life balance.
I mean, that would be a no.
Nope.
I think what I am doing, I mean, now I'm newly single. What I did hang out with friends last night, and that was very healing.
Was that MJ Rodriguez?
MJ Rodriguez,
friend of this podcast, MJ Rodriguez.
Oh, MJ's in the podcast. MJ Rodriguez and my friend Peppermint.
Yes.
And we've been friends with MJ pre-pose, friends with Pep, like I mean, Prev and I have been friends like at least 18 years.
You have some very cool. You run in some very cool circles.
Yeah, it was. I like literally last night. I was like, we have been friends since before all of this started. You know,
which is amazing.
And I mean, I could cry right now thinking about how wonderful it is to have people who have been there since before all of the pomp and circumstance, who just know you and loved you then and still love you.
Yeah.
That is an incredible gift. And I'm so proud of them and just so grateful that we all are living our best lives in so many ways.
Yeah. And even if you weren't, even like you said, you're good friends without the success. That's how you know they're good friends.
Absolutely.
And so I'd love to hear about the success, because I know that you had sort of like it's safe to say your narrative is one, like, it was about 2013 that things blew up for you. I'd love to hear about the before and about the after.
Yeah.
Take me back to the very beginning. Like, first of all, when were you bit by the acting bug in particular?
Well, I started out as a dancer when I was, I think, 5 years old. Before I was 5, I danced around all the time. I always had music in my head. I was always dancing. And at 5 years old, I decided I wanted to be a professional dancer, and I started begging my mother to put me into dance classes. Ballet, jazz, tap, anything.
Cool.
So I remember 5 years old, I'm like, can I take dance classes? Can I take dance classes?
Cool.
And then I remember, I think I was 6 and I was in karate, and I was like, this is not what I asked for. And
that's different.
Yeah, it's really different. And finally, by the time I was in 3rd grade, my mother heard me and found a program called Culture in Black and White, which was an arts program for low-income kids in my hometown of Mobile, Alabama, where I got to go once a week and study dance. I started with tap and jazz. My mom thought ballet was too gay, and so I didn't do ballet at the time. And at 8, I wasn't going to argue with that. I was just like so happy to be dancing, and then I finally gotten her to get me there. Yeah. And so it really, and then I started doing choreographing dance routines and doing talent shows all over my hometown. And then I was part of a youth organization, and they had these conventions, and so I did talent shows like all over the Southeast. And there are many trophies, like some occasional first place trophies and a lot of second place trophies, a few third place trophies in my mom's house in Alabama from all the talent shows I did when I was a kid. So I started out as a dancer, but when I would get bullied and stuff, I would I always had music in my head, and so I was dancing all the time, and there was always characters. I always felt character was attached to movement for me. So I felt like I was sort of making up these characters through movement. So I always sort of felt like I was an actor, and I would transition into acting, because you can't, sort of dance your whole life, according to some of the lure. And so I always knew I would eventually be an actor, but I always felt like an actor who danced. So I didn't officially start acting until college. I went to the Alabama School of Fine Arts in Birmingham, Alabama for high school, and that's when I started my ballet training with Dame Sonia Arva.
A dame?
She's a dame,
wow.
Yes. I forget who knighted her. But she was Dame Sonia Arva and Tor Satowski, who was her husband. And I started my classical ballet training there. And then I did I got very serious about ballet and did some summer school programs. The first time I went to New York, I was at Joffrey. I had a scholarship at Joffrey Ballet School. And then I went to Houston Ballet Academy one summer. And then I went to Universal Ballet Academy in D.C., which I think is just now called the Bolshoi School. But at the time, they called it Universal Ballet Academy, but it's the teachers from the Bolshoi Ballet who have a school in DC here in the States. And so I got really serious about ballet. In high school, and then I was a dance major in college. I went to Indiana University for 2 years with a dance scholarship and an academic scholarship. Then I transferred to Marymount Manhattan College, and finally I was in New York City, and that's when I started acting. I'd done musicals when I was at IU. I was in Hair and Pippin dip in. And I'd done some musicals in high school. But I did my first quote-unquote straight play or non-musical play when I was at Marymount. It was my first semester there. I was a dance major, but there was a guest teacher named Daniel Banks at Marymount that semester. He saw me in the hall and he thought I'd be perfect for this play he was doing.
That's how you were cast?
Yeah, he saw me in the hall. And at the time, I was in this kind of gender non-conforming space. I was a huge fan of big, wide-legged bell-bottoms. I remember I had this pair of black and white bell-bottoms that I'd gotten from like the Salvation Army or something, Salvation Armani. And I had a shaved head, and at the time I was shaving my brows and drawing them on every day, or if I didn't have time, I'd be browless, and that was not cute. But
I'm sure it was cute.
But I found a way to get my lashes on every day. My first year at
lashes,
Marymount.
Yes, brows, no.
And everybody thought that I had naturally really long lashes at Marymount, and no one spooked that they were like extensions. Anyway, but Daniel Banks saw me in the hall and said, "You'd be perfect for this play I'm doing." Wow. And I didn't understand that I should have gotten permission from the dance department to like audition for
another
plays.
Department. Oh.
But I did, and I got cast. And the play was Andorra by Max Frisch.
Okay.
And I played the village idiot who grinned and nodded. I didn't have any lines, and I would just grin and nod. And can I tell you, I stole the show with no lines.
I'm sure you did. Well, also, it makes sense that with the dance background to have that was a very physical performance.
Exactly.
Of body language.
But Daniel was the first teacher who talked to me about being neutral, what it meant to sort of, because I was sort of all over the place. So kept sort of becoming neutral with the body was the first time a teacher told me that, and that neutrality was central to the idiot that I played in Andorra.
You had more of a musical theater sensibility of showmanship and flashy and
I think so. That first semester at Marymount too, I ended up auditioning for a musical. Charles Strauss, who composed Annie,
yes,
and Bye Bye Birdie. He was a guest teacher at Marymount that semester, my first semester there, and he did a musical review called Can't Stop Dancing, where he took a lot of his famous songs from different from his catalog and rewrote the lyrics and created this musical review for the students at Marymount. And I auditioned, and I remember I was just big and just sort of all over the place. And I remember several callbacks for Charles Strauss, but I finally got cast in it. And yeah, so that my first semester at Marymount, I did Andorra, I did Can't Stop Dancing, and then I had to hit all my stuff in the dance department that I had obligations there because I was on a dance scholarship. So and the dance department was not happy that I was doing all this stuff in the theater department, but I managed to never be late for any rehearsals, and I juggled it all. Because I was in New York. That's what I was supposed to do.
That's what you're still doing. You're very good at juggling a lot of different things. But it sounds like one of those things where the path is like the universe or the forces at work or whatever calling you to the drama department as you're doing the dance.
It's funny because then I started actually taking acting classes and I did some other stuff. I kind of was more active in the theater department once I got to Marymount than I was in the dance department. Dance at the time, by the time I got to Marymount, my gender stuff was really kicking up big time, and dance was so gendered, especially ballet. It was like you had to be very masculine and dance like a man, and I never, whatever that means, right? But I never really did that, and so it just got harder and harder for me to. I was just sort of done with it. And then I was finally in New York. And when I got to New York in 1993, it was the sort of height of the Club Kid movement in New York. And so I was literally going to Limelight, Disco 2000. And I would be out till the club closed at 4 or 5. But I remember just being out till 6 in the morning. And I had Martha Graham technique at 7:30. So I would these are the things that you can do when you're, very young. You can literally stay up all night and then go to ballet class an hour later, or it was in this case Martha Graham technique, which is so wonderful. I'm so grateful. Mar Benham was my Graham teacher, and I'm so grateful I got to study Graham. It was the first time I had studied Graham, and it really there's something so much about that technique that I feel like I bring with me to this day in my work as an actor.
As an actor.
Yeah. I feel like I'm digressing all over the place. But.
That's what we love. No, I love the... I'm fascinated by outside-in approaches for acting craft, and is it safe to say that I love the idea that Martha Graham is informing your creation of a TV character? Like,
what Martha Graham does, honestly, the Graham stuff comes in more with photo shoots and like fashion shows. And I did it when I went to walk in New York Fashion Week, or the ballet comes in a lot in photo shoots and Flaw. But then it depends on the role.
There might be a role that's,
It depends on the role. So a lot of my work over the years with it depends. Like when I did Rocky Horror, it was very physical.
I was going to say
that was very physical.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, it was a musical, so that makes sense. Yeah. But then a lot of my training with Susan Batson and then with Brad was being physical, but like sort of trying to going to neutral, kind of taking away a lot of my Laverneisms and a lot of my, because I'm a character all by myself. You had noticed.
I love that.
I think that's safe to say. I think I've always been a character, and so finding in the acting technique ways to sort of strip all of that back and then build up someone new.
Yeah.
When it's appropriate.
Yeah. Exoskeleton. It's like taking off the layers and then rebuilding new ones.
Yeah. And a lot of and I was thinking as I was having my little breakdown earlier today, that so much of my training as an actor with Susan, especially with Susan Batson, was about, by the time I made it to Susan, I think it was 2001, 2002, I started training with her. Wow. I had so much trauma, childhood trauma that I hadn't dealt with, so much bullying, abandonment, abuse that I had not dealt with. And I had gotten this very elaborate cover, all these defense mechanisms as a way to not show people that I was hurt by all the horrible things that had happened to me.
And to bury
it. I had buried it very sufficiently, very successfessfully, so I thought. But I had this very elaborate cover that was all artifice. And so then, and I had personality and I had presence. Yeah. But when I got to Susan, I had to get through all of those layers of defense. And it was like an exorcism that took years. That took years and a lot of pain and a lot of work. And Susan Batson's process is based in sense memory. It's her own process. I always recommend people read her book. She has a book called Truth. And her process it's very much Susan's own process, but she's a member of the Actors Studio. She studied with Lee Strasberg. She studied with Uta Hagen. And then sort of created this whole process, and I'm not sure, and maybe some of the Backstage listeners of this podcast can let me know if there's another teacher who talks about the unfulfilled need in the way that Susan Batson does. And I think my teacher that I'm working with now here in LA, Kimberly Harris, studied with Susan back in the day. And so we talk about the unfulfilled need, but it again comes from Susan's process. And I don't know other teachers who really deal with the unfulfilled need of a character. Do you know
I don't know if I know that term. I know super objective. It sounds like, is that similar to the idea of what a character wants on a deep level?
Well, yes, but the way Susan would distinguish it is that the unfulfilled need is something that we all develop as human beings by the age of 5 years old. The example she gives, I hope she doesn't mind me saying, she tells it to all her students. The example she gives is that she says that she has a need for a mother, and so usually, and people can't usually sort of go out in the world with their unfulfilled need just on their shoulders. So we cover and we often act in opposition to that unfulfilled need. So so she needs a mother, and so in turn she mothers everyone else. Gotcha. And so often what we do as human beings is actually in direct opposition to what we actually need. Cool. And so that unfulfilled need is something in an ideal world of acting is infused in every beat of what the character does. And that unfulfilled need can be expressed in the tragic flaw. And a tragic flaw for me is something that is often where I start with the character, what sort of gets in the way of that unfulfilled need. And the way Susan defines the tragic flaw is the tension between the unfulfilled need and the public persona. think I'm getting this right. This is my interpretation of it. This is my interpretation of Susan Batson. So the tension between the unfulfilled need and the public persona. So the public persona are those covers we have. For me, it was that elaborate kind of cover defense mechanisms that I had, personality that I developed to like not show people my vulnerabilities and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And the tragic flaw is the tension between those things. Often addiction, often things that character defects, where we're often kind of always blaming people or accusing people of things, the things that sort of get in the way of us fulfilling that unfulfilled need. The things that sort of that need jammed up is also another way Susan would sort of define the tragic flaw of the character. And I think and the whole process is about creating a walking, talking human being. So that like she says that you need to know how a character goes to the toilet, Sure. And so in building, she has a bunch of exercises. Usually it's the private. We start, with a private moment, and the developing your own method class that she teaches at her studio. You usually start with a character private moment, and then there's usually some animal work that she'll bring in, so that you can physicalize the character in a place of defeat. I've been thinking a lot about that this week.
From a place of defeat.
Character in the place of defeat. Just some really great exercises to get you to live in the character. But that process for me, because I had so many defenses up that I had to have this exorcism, this excavation, this sort of stripping of layers. The way Brad talks about it is that it's like bean dip, like 7-layer bean dip. That there's like, there's one layer of the bean dip that comes and there's another layer underneath that, and another layer and another layer and another layer. And underneath all that is like the core of who we are. And we as actors have to get to the core of who we are so that we understand how to give that to a character. And it starts with our own stories, our own personalization. And so a character might have a different accent from me, or they might walk differently or have a different backstory. But that core unfulfilled need human stuff has to be mine. It has to be personal. It has to be personal. So anyway, I feel like I'm rambling on and on and on.
No, this is
really
so
dorky.
Technically, it's so dorky. You've studied from a lot of different people. I love hearing this kind of stuff. It sounds like I want to talk about how this all relates to being queer, because it sounds like the queer experience has a lot to do with like burying the trauma and having to excavate. Yeah. But it sounds like the theory goes, you can't create a character. I mean, of course you could. You could create a character, and maybe it's not very thorough, without the process of being truly, truly, truly honest with yourself down to your deepest layers. Yeah. And reckoning with that. And Absolutely. Like you said, it takes years. It took you years.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, I don't actually identify as queer. I identify as a straight woman who's trans. But I'm obviously transgender. And so, but when Brad started his Act Out class, Brad Cacotera started his Act Out class in 2010. I was in the inaugural class.
That's so cool.
And it was a class that he started for LGBTQ actors to work on our stuff. And it started as a response to, at the time, a lot of I think Kyla Clemente had just committed suicide, and there were a bunch of LGBTQ suicides at the time. And he was like, "What can I do?" And sort of response to that. And then he was noticing that a lot of his LGBTQ actors, particularly gay and lesbian actors, weren't booking the gay roles. And he was like, "What's up with that?" And he found that for LGBTQ people, when we had an impulse as a child, our hand would be swatted away from that impulse. If you were assigned male at birth and you wanted to reach for pink, your hand was swatted away. If you were assigned female at birth and you wanted to reach for blue, your hand was swatted away. And so then we, through a process of shaming and socialization, we didn't trust our impulses, and we were constantly in the space of second guessing. And so much of Brad's process, and so much of sort of a Meisner approach, is about having that impulse and going with the impulse, having and not second guessing it. And the moment you sort of have an impulse and second guess it, you're not in the moment. You're not in the moment. And so a lot of what Brad's class was about for me was trusting my impulse more. But then what Brad also does is a lot of foundational work that gets you under that, to the core of that bean dip, that gets you, and it's a different approach from Susan. It's similar, but it's different, because he talks you through a lot of it. In the act out class is an improvisation based class, and so he would sort of, he would ask you, what was your first sexual experience like? But then now do it as Freud, and now do it as blah, and then so he would layer on different sort of character choices with that. But then all of it was about getting to your core, and then sort of reality checking in a very sort of Brene Brown kind of way. The stories that we told ourselves about ourselves. So there would be moments of like, we would tell, for me, I would be in class and I would say, talk about just feeling ugly and feeling unlovable, and then he would have everybody close their eyes, and then has anyone else felt that way? And then like oftentimes everybody in the room, they would raise their hand, and then so the person who is in this space of ultimate vulnerability, oh wow. Yeah. This person who's in the space of ultimate vulnerability has a mirror that they're not alone. They're not the only one who's felt that. Yeah. And what Brene Brown says about shame is that it dissipates 85% when it is met with empathy. So empathy is the antidote to shame. And empathy is me too. Empathy is basically that you're not alone. It's when we hold empathic space with someone, it's about sort of going into the darkness with them and letting them know that they're not alone. And shame, the way shame works, she defines shame as the intensely painful belief that one is unworthy of connection and belonging. She says that guilt is, I'm sorry I made a mistake, and shame is, I'm sorry I am a mistake.
Oh my God.
And so the thing about shame is that it isolates us. It makes us feel like we are the only one going through something, and that we are unworthy of connection and belonging. And human beings crave connection and belonging. Love and belonging are immutable needs of human beings, according to her work. And I think that's true. And so then it isolates us. And so what empathy does is it connects us, and it makes us see that we're not alone.
The first step is seeing other people.
And so that healing process, that space of being able to, in Brad's class, of being able to share our shame story, have it met with empathy, it begins to heal that process. And so then it's not as hard to stand up on a stage or go on camera or be at an audition and just unzip. Brad would just call it unzip and just expose all your stuff, because we've done it already, and we've done it in a safe place. Ideally, a set should be safe, hopefully, and a stage and with a director should be safe, so you can continue to unzip as an actor and reveal the deepest, darkest parts of yourself, because that is what we're doing. We want ideally someone to see a television show or see a film or a play and see themselves and see a deep human truth that allows them to see themselves, to understand the human condition better, and ultimately to heal.
And to have that empathy. Yeah. To see that becomes less isolating if you see someone giving that honest performance.
Yeah.
Is it, when you say unzip, in character, when you're performing a character, are you unzipping the character to reveal the character's 7 layers of bean dip? Or is it also you yourself? Or is it like
it's both. Okay. I think it's both. And I think I'm finding what the distinctions between where you end and the character begins. I think the emotional life is all yours, and it's but I think so often I've been doing a movie. I've been doing an action movie.
Really?
Called Jolt with Kate Beckinsale. I'm gonna have a few weeks a break, and Bobby Cannavale and Stanley Tucci. It's like really lovely people.
Are you doing action-y stuff?
I'm doing action-y stuff.
Cool.
But with that character, she it's my emotional life, but when she talks a certain way, and she there's a physicality that that Nevins has. Angela Nevins is her name. There's a physicality that she has that gets me into. There's a phrase, a phrase that gets me into the way she talks, and there's a physicality that gets me into her, Angela, that is distinct from Laverne.
Cool.
And it resembles Laverne to people maybe because I'm the actor playing her. But for me, there needs to be something specific that is not me, that gets me into whoever this person is. And it's often physical sometimes, and it's often physical and it's vocal, because the emotional life, again, is it has to be mine. It has to be like how I would honestly react. And if it's not, there are some situations where I when I played Dr. Frank-N-Furter, I'm not a murderous sociopath.
But that's
goodness.
like a heightened
It's heightened. It was
world.
Camp. It was
Campy.
so but at the same time, I don't know, because it's like when if you have, because I have so much empathy for Frank-N-Furter. Ultimately, Frank-N-Furter had this whole evening planned where she was going to reveal Rocky, this amazing creature. Like, I've created life, right? And I had this whole plan at this convention, and then Brad and Janet sort of come and sort of fuck it up. And and when they come, I think I'm going to have control. I'm going to fuck with them, and they're going to be part of my show. But then when Janet sleeps with Rocky, it's like it's on, And then when Eddie, and there are constant interruptions, and then when Eddie comes in, we have to. So it was so in a way, like, I'm not a murderous psychopath, but I didn't approach Frank-N-Furter as a murderous psychopath. I approached Frank-N-Furter as someone who wasn't certainly an alien, but wanted love and attention, and that finally I had made this person who was going to love me, and and that's very personal for me. That's personal. Not, and I think that as I talk about it, I'm like, well, I'm not a murderous psychopath, but like, I don't think murderous psychopaths think they're murderous psychopaths. It's like we all want something and need something, and I needed love.
That was her unfulfilled need.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I love talking about the idea of giving an honest performance, even in something as campy as that. Yeah,
I mean, but I think the camp, even for Frank-N-Furter, is part of. I mean, when I camped up, it was part of like my need for attention, for love, for
one of the shields.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so that's what it was for me when I was, had all these layers that I had to.
And so the bean dip layers, those are also. Accent, like you said, a walk, a certain way to say a line.
Yeah.
So is it safe to say, too, that like one of the factors that helps you construct that character inside out is writing or directing? Like for this Jolt movie, you said that you saw a line that then indicated, oh, this is how this character talks.
Sometimes it's the rhythm of something. Sometimes it's just a choice. And sometimes it can be an arbitrary choice. Sometimes if it's like... If you're doing some like intense theater where there's a time period or someone who actually lived, then you can get cues that way. And sometimes it's just a choice. Sometimes it's just like, I want her to be this way. Yeah. And so I just with Jolt, because it happened really quickly, I had to make some really quick choices. So I didn't have a lot of time to prepare. And sometimes that's really fun because it's because then I'm in impulse, and I just trust the impulse and go with it. And so often, because we have all of our preparation, and then and Susan says this, and then like Viola Davis in her talk, she's like acting goddess to me.
Same.
And she in an interview was saying that like we do all of our preparation, all our biographies, and all of our things, and that's awesome. But then when you get to the set, you let all that go, and you have to trust that it's all there, and you live in the moment. And then and then the impulsive stuff, the whatever reaction you have to whatever, and the stimuli, reacting to external stimuli is what we do as actors. Maybe it's something the director said. Maybe it's something the actor did. Yeah. There's something about the circumstances. Allow yourself to sort of be stimulated by the environment, and just be open to whatever, And it's been different things for me. I was thinking about the episode I'm nominated for an Emmy for with Orange Is the New Black.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's still, I'm trying not to be as overwhelmed as I was the first two times, but it's just overwhelming. It just is. It's like, holy shit. Like, people thought like my work was good enough, to nominate me.
It's beautiful.
And other actors. It's an incredible honor. But I remember that when we were shooting that episode, Laura Prepon was directing, and she said something to me just about it was about what it meant to me, and it was just in this moment. Spoilers. I'm so programmed not to give after 7 years. I'm so programmed not to give any spoilers away, even though it was season 6.
It was last year,
and it was a year ago, and we shot it 2 years ago. But there was something
minor
that
spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, yeah. That I'm basically offered the chance to get out of prison, early, and to really just drop into that, and I'm offered money. And so like, what does this mean to you? And so it just was an invitation to just deeply personalize it. And that's all it took. And maybe it was the way she said it. I love being directed by actors. Maybe it was the way she said it. It was the way she looked at me. I was just open to it. And I've had 5 seasons and like hell and back of living this woman that it just dropped in for me. And it was and it changed the scene for me.
I love that.
And also too, sometimes the external stimuli is just about getting a new moment to happen, because the camera needs to see a new moment happen. So
a new moment.
When we prepare, and if we think when I prepare, because I've been an actor who over prepares sometimes, and I had a job where I had to let that go because I didn't have time.
You're too rigid. Yeah.
So I had the performance and the arc. I'm like, it's gonna arc this way, and then my knee beat is gonna be here, and then I'm gonna, I'm like really like,
unable to be like flexible.
Kind of. I mean, I think one of my strengths is that you can adjust me. That I take direction, and I can do something any number of ways. That is part of my training with Brad. That like I don't get stuck in doing something. When I over prepared, I have rehearsed lines, scenes multiple ways so that I have options.
Right. Okay.
However, even with all of that, there needs to, what I've learned over the years, and this has just been working, that I need to allow space for something that really what the camera needs is just something, an aha in the moment. The camera needs to see something happening right then and there, needs to see a realization, needs to see a reaction that is authentic and real in the moment and not predetermined. And so so I've had scenes go in completely different directions than I thought they were going to go.
Right.
And some of that was just about getting a real moment to happen, not just getting something real and truthful and unexpected to happen.
Yeah.
That hopefully continue to tell the story the way that the director and the writer intends. And so much of it really is about, I've had to many times let go of the story I thought was being told and the story I wanted to tell, and surrender to what my director wanted and wants, and what the writer wants. And that and I've talked to a lot of actors who get really frustrated with that. And I have to say, I'm not. I used to be because I was like, I gave this great moment and they didn't use this and they used that.
Totally.
And I was frustrated because I wanted the scene to go one way, and now I'm like, we are kind of like, we're like musicians in an orchestra, and the director is the conductor. And
each performance is different.
But the conductor is shaping it. And we are tools in that. On stage it's different. On stage it is yours. It is your performance. It's crafted in a very different way. But on camera it is really about the director. It's about the editor. On TV it's really about the writers. And so I have to surrender to that, and I can't be precious about it. I did a pilot a few years ago, and it was so it's called The Trustee. We shot it up in Vancouver. And the way we shot it was a lot of physical comedy, and the character I played she had a lot of physical comedy, and they would like, okay, do what I do, and then we'd just do a series of the line. We would do it, and then it was like, okay, give it to me this way, give it to me that way, and I just shoot out like 5 or 6 different ways of doing the line.
That's the new moment.
And what happened when I saw the episode, I was like, oh, they used that one. Because if you do 6 takes of something,
sometimes wildly different.
I wasn't beholden to any of the ways. I'm like, well, I gave them all the options. This is what they wanted, and
I cling to one of the ways if it's like just
and
trust the editor and
and just hopefully trusting that And they're not always right. I mean, I had a conversation with a director recently. It was really interesting. I did I shouldn't say.
No naming names.
But I had a scene. I had a scene that was I played a character who was very like, you know, the strong woman. I play strong women, I guess, because, you know, I'm a strong woman. And but we actually improvised a scene that was really vulnerable, and some of the male producers, I was told, Lord, this is like potentially going to give it away. Luckily, I've worked with a lot of women directors, and they wanted to cut it. They were like, this isn't. She's strong. They thought, is there another take where she's stronger? This isn't her.
I see.
And it made me think about like how, and because I saw a rough cut, and I was just surprised that the emotional scene stayed. It's been edited shorter now, so a lot of the emotion, because a lot of times those I've done takes of a lot of things, and the emotional, like, raw stuff doesn't stay in. And I'm just sort of like, what's that about? I'm like, so it makes me question myself as an actor. I'm like, am I pushing? Is it not authentic? Is it too self-indulgent? You know, I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
Right. Like, you question your taste in terms of the storytelling.
But what she said is that the male sort of producers, you know, and studio heads were like, this isn't in the character and isn't strong and whatever. And she fought to keep the scene in because she thought it was a different layer of the character that no one's just strong all the time, which I think is great.
Yeah. I always say, like, you're the authority on the character. The actor is the authority on the character. So I almost feel like their viewpoint needs to be listened to in terms of what's cut and
yes and no. There was a moment. What I was I think I can name names with this one. Can I name names with this one? Matthew Weiner was directing an episode of Orange Is the New Black. And I'm a huge fan. I met him a few times. He's friends with Jenji, and I met him at like a Time 100 event. And so when he was directing, I was so excited because I'm obsessed with Mad Men, obsessed.
Totally.
Like, who isn't?
Same. Yeah.
And so I was so excited, and I was and I watched him I said at this point, this was season 4 or season 4. So we most of us knew our characters pretty well.
Yeah.
And I was saying, well, I don't think she would do this. And then he was just like, well, this is the moment. And I was just like, okay. And then I saw him with another actor, and she was saying, well, my character wouldn't do this, and like this related. And she was really fighting with them.
With the writing.
Not fighting with them, but like just pushing back, because she's, as you said, she's been with this character for 4 or 5 seasons. She knows this character. And he said, I don't know what to say to you. This is the moment. And what was so beautiful for me about that is that it was about letting go of any preconceptions about what the character would have done in the past and being in this moment, and that he wanted to tell a particular story as a director in collaboration with the writer of the episode, and we are tools for that. And if I'm not going to trust Matthew Weiner, who am I going to trust?
Exactly.
And so then there's the piece. Yes, the actor knows the character, whatever, but then sometimes there's. Sometimes it's like the act. We can be self-indulgent. We can be I'll speak in the I. I can be self-indulgent as an actor.
Yeah.
I've gone in and I want to have a big moment, right? Like, honestly, Lord help me, I'm going to say this. I'm saying this out loud in public. But like, I want to have a big dramatic moment. I want to have I want to cheer up some scenery, and I want to and it's not about that.
If it's not serving the story, then it's not.
And it's not always about that.
Yeah.
And so then I have to be in a space as an artist to be true to the wants, needs, so that you can still be in the character, because the character wants and needs a lot of things. I'm Laverne. I'm in this moment right now talking to you, and I'm still Laverne. I need things. I still have my unfulfilled need. I'm operating on a lot of different levels right now. I had an MRI gone wrong this morning, and I have a heart monitor on. And there's a bunch of stuff going on right now with my body, but I'm still Laverne. But I can modulate, and I can
the Lavernism
talk to you in a number of different ways, and this can go in a lot of different directions. So we actually have no idea where this is going to go, and that is the space too that we have to constantly create as actors, that we don't know.
The space.
We don't know.
It's like that embracing the uncertainty thing. It's it sounds like improv and Meisner and that stuff, like you obviously you recommend studying improv.
Absolutely. And pure Meisner is frustrating.
Oh yeah.
Pure
I've done
Meisner is
it.
like,
yeah.
it's a little tedious for me, to be honest. I love Brad's approach to it, Brad Calcaterra's approach to it, that I think Sally Johnson was his teacher, who sort of adapted Meisner. She studied with Meisner and sort of adapted his process for film and TV. And I think it's great. Meisner's great for film and TV because it really is about creating a new moment that
each take,
that each take has to be new and fresh. And sometimes I see actors who they get it and then they move on. But then for me, I'm always like, I like options. I like I like being able to try it a lot of different ways. I like...
which is often not the case in film or TV. You've maybe 2 takes, 3 takes.
For TV, for sure.
Yeah.
In film, too. Yeah. It's like, oftentimes. It depends on the film. It depends on the director. When I... remember when I first started Orange, and I had my backstory in season 1 that Jodie Foster directed. God, it's just such a... It's a beautiful thing to be able to say. Jodie was the first time she had done television, and she liked a lot of takes.
Oh, okay.
And I got a lot of overtime for that. Thank you, Jodie.
That's hilarious. Oh.
But she likes a lot of takes.
Yeah.
And I like a lot of takes. And so I got to try it a lot of different ways.
Cool.
And so then it just... I live for that. I live for just for options for me and just to get it all out, Yeah. But it's not always time for that.
Like you said, directed by actors is a very cool thing.
Yeah.
They know how to communicate.
Agreed.
There's something about the way Laura Prepon said the note to you that triggered that inspiration.
Yeah.
I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
I also love this idea that it's specifically for TV. It's not true for theater or for film, that you're 4 seasons in and you do feel like maybe a little cocky, like, I know this character. And maybe that can sometimes, you're saying, don't limit yourself. Don't, you got to trust if somebody else comes in.
People can evolve. People can evolve, and there can be certain things about a character like that they walk a certain way because they had an injury, or they talk a certain way because they're from a certain region or whatever. But people's emotional lives can evolve, and traumas can make people do different things. When I was in season 5, when my character was in the shoe and in solitary confinement, what I loved about that season for me is that because of the trauma of the isolation of solitary, I got to kind of have a totally new character in a way.
It felt like
it was a new Sophia, and that was absolutely thrilling.
Yeah.
Another dimension to the same human being, but the trauma of what she had been through allowed for this kind of new life, and it was really fun and exciting. And so it's a beautiful thing to get to 7 seasons with the show and 7 years with the character, to be able to really let them live. Yeah,
and as you've said, using your own personal traumas to bring to bear to those traumas of the character, right? Like, you don't have to be super honest right now about what the traumas are, but it's safe to say that there were overlaps between your own trauma and Sophia's.
And it's funny because back when I was studying with Susan Batson, Roberta Wallach, I was in her developing your own method class, and then I had a very intense personal private moment. And I just remember Roberta almost sort of flippantly saying, therapy.
Oh God.
But that I needed to be in therapy, because the truth is, with sense memory, and it's very tricky for me, and I go into it with Kimberly, my coach I'm working with now, very gently.
Yeah.
Because of how traumatized I am.
Raw.
It can be too raw.
Yeah.
It can be, I had moments in Susan's class where I was puking. I puked 3 different times in class. Oh yeah, where the stuff was literally coming up.
Literally, physiological.
It's physical.
Yeah.
And I didn't, because the trauma was so, I hadn't dealt with it. I didn't know how to deal with it. It can shut you down.
Yeah.
So if a trauma comes up in a sense memory and it's too overwhelming, then you shut down, and then you actually not useful for the character. If you're shut down, you obviously can't use it for the work. And so therapy
you have to gently get to it.
You have to get to it in a way that you can use.
Yeah.
You have to get to for the acting.
Use again and again.
And use again and again.
Yeah.
And sometimes for me with sense memory, I exhaust the memory, and so then I need to use something else.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
And so what I found more useful, particularly for film and TV, is the as if, particularly for intensely emotional stuff, the Meisner as if.
Yeah.
So because that I can regenerate over and over again.
Okay.
And the sense memory piece, what Susan would say about it is that what you need is the sensation of it. You need the sensation of the memory. But personally, I think with my own trauma stuff, I have to be really careful. And what we work really carefully with Kimberly now to not have it be a shutdown, to have it be, and the thing that you, there's a therapeutic piece. So there's a therapeutic piece of going to talk to someone when stuff comes up, and then I'm working in a somatic way right now to work stuff through and out of the body, and it seems like I'm about to, with everything's going on, I'm about to have a breakthrough with there. But with the sense, what you can use with the sense memory, really, particularly with the personalization piece, is there when you're in doing the memory work, and there's a personalization, Susan would often ask, and Kimberly does this as well, was there something you wanted to do or say in that moment that you didn't do? And
the regret
say it now. But what that is for me, and this is my interpretation of it, and I would love to talk to Susan about this actually, but it's the way I have interpreted it in my process is that's what you act. The thing that you did, that you wanted to say or do in the moment that you didn't, say it now. That is the thing that you act. That is what you use in the scene, because that really is the that's the unfulfilled. That's part of the unfulfilled need, but it's the thing that can propels you.
It's drama.
And also, in a somatic sense, and acting is not about healing this stuff, but somatically, with the somatic work, when you do or say the thing that you didn't say in a in a moment of trauma, right? Where in trauma, as she defines, as my therapist, is too much, too fast, too soon. And for the nervous system, and there was something you didn't do or say, then there was probably a shutdown, the fight, flight, or freeze, and it's probably a freeze. Something you wanted to do or say in the moment but didn't say begins to get it out of the body, because with the somatic work, yes, with the right therapist, with the right therapist, right? And so obviously, see, when it's not healthy is when we use drugs, or when it's jammed up. When we use drugs, or when we are abusive to people, or beat people up, or act in different ways we act out as human beings, because there's something in us that we cannot deal with. We don't know how to deal with it, and it's physical, and we have to get it out. It has to, but we don't know how to get it out.
To do something physical to get it out.
And so, you know, a trained professional for this stuff.
Trained professional,
getting it out of the body, sometimes you can do that vocally, but it's usually physically, and there's different ways
puking,
to do it.
Like on stage or in class or whatever.
Lord.
This is
hard stuff, and people want to be actors, and I'm just like, are you ready?
Are you ready?
Are you ready to puke? You know?
You can't ignore those traumas. In fact, you got to use them. This is getting even more psychological, but you said the idea of using a sense memory to the point that it's done. At least in that moment, because I think it's not that, I don't think that it's done. I think that sometimes you shut down, you cry so much over one thing, and then you just kind of get numb. Have you cried so much that you get numb from it? Sure.
At least in a moment on a day that if it's about someone who broke up with you, or someone, you just get so tired of crying that you just kind of get
your
numb.
Your brain kind of moves on. Yeah.
Or your body, it's the nervous system shutting down a little bit.
Right.
And so...
But it's not solving the trauma.
No.
Okay.
Not at all. It doesn't solve it. It just, it's just a shutdown that happens. And so then if to activate, I'm not a person who cries on cue. I would love to be that actor who does. Mm-hmm. But to reactivate, the whole crying, I freaking hate that. But it happens or it doesn't. The as if is a better way to do that.
Gotcha. It's a trick to get there. Yeah, it sounds like.
Or a person. Sometimes it's a personalization, but usually, there's a moment, and I did a show that. I didn't say that I had to cry, but it felt like it just felt like the moment. And I remember to get there, and it would end up being cut from the show.
Of course.
A lot of my crying moments are cut. But what I did was, it was about the person, what the person meant to me, and then was also about, it was a negative story that I have. So like we, human beings are hardwired for story. God, this looks like a bitch in therapy. But human beings are hardwired for story. And a lot of times for me, historically, the stories that I've told myself about myself are not really been so accurate. You're a piece of shit. No one's ever going to love you. And you're ugly or whatever the things, the shame stories that have kept me, kept me small, whatever. And so sometimes what I used in that moment was the personalization. I had endowed my fellow, actor with like I was in love with them, and in my mind,
almost
it becomes
substituting them for some.
Yeah, there was a substitution piece, but then it becomes the actor that you're working with, that you endow with all the stuff.
Yes.
So you have this sensation of love and maybe someone specific, but then once you have the actor that you're playing with, there's substitutions for auditions, but then once you're in it, you use the person that you're in the scene with. And so that person is endowed with all that stuff. I think that's probably why so many romances happen on.
Sure.
But anyway, so she was, the character was endowed with all the love stuff, and then the idea of losing that. That's a little bit of the as if, but then it was the as if, but it was that as if coupled with some of my shaming stories, right? That like just was the perfect storm of stuff. But that's like years of like kind of figuring out like what my shame stuff is, and like that I love. I've been in. Brene Brown, in her latest book, Dare to Lead, starts it off with this Julius Caesar quote: "What gets in the way becomes the way. What gets in the way becomes the way." And she, in the context of her work, she talks about bravery and courage and vulnerability and all of these things, but she didn't get to having conversations about being wholehearted, being brave and courageous by studying, she's a researcher studying bravery and courage. She got there by studying shame.
Yeah.
Shame is the thing that keeps us from all those things. And so she often says you got to dance with the one that brung you. And so that has been, that's why, and I think that's why instinctively when I discovered like the character's tragic flaw, that was a way for me to get in, because that was the thing that was sort of in the way. And then it's not always the way I get in, but oftentimes it is. It's like, what is this? Because our flaws really are what make us deeply and beautifully human.
Totally.
What I love about Sophia is that I find her, particularly that first season, just deeply flawed in so many ways, and so much fun to play. Just people who are psychologically, emotionally well, who've like been doing their meditation and therapy, and just never do anything f***ed up. It's like, that's boring.
That's super
not drama.
Interesting. There's no drama. It is about the tension of like you said earlier. It's not the it's the unfulfilled need. It's not that your needs are met and you're just sitting there perfectly content as a person. Nobody's like that. We all have
people can get there from a lot of therapy and meditation and whatnot, but then that's not drama.
It's not drama.
That's not a reason to tune in.
Which is often why it makes sense that your way in is the tragic flaw. Your character.
We're looking for the drama. We're looking for the thing that's going to ignite, the conflict.
Totally. If everything's mellow and fine, it doesn't really make for TV.
No, or film.
Or
theater.
Yeah.
Or a reality show.
Oh my God, totally.
Right? The best reality shows are everybody's fighting. Everybody's like, going at each other's throats. The response to with trauma, when we're in trauma, we get into this heightened survival state, right? And so fight, flight, or freeze are the things that the survival, things that we go into when we're in trauma. The way shame works is when we're in shame, it hijacks our nervous system. And the three responses to shame, when we're in shame, is we move away, we move towards, or we move against. Moving away would be fleeing. Moving towards would be like, Brene Brown gives this great example, like, she had just come back from a conference, and a really important conference, and her husband had to take care of the kids for like a week, and so she's in carpool lane, and then this rolls down her window, another mom from her school is like, "Where have you been for this past week?" She's like, "Oh, I had a work conference," and she's like, "Your husband's so good to be taking care of those kids while you're away." And and the woman just kind of like basically shames Brene. She tells the story in her work, so I'm not telling her business. And the woman shames Brene for being away for a week and basically accuses her of being a bad mother. And like Brene is kind of like in this whole thing of like probably feeling a little guilt because she has been away herself, but then she had a conversation with her husband. We got this. The family can kick in.
Yeah.
This conference is important. Go and do this for your work. And the woman shames her. And what Brene says in this moment is that moving away would just be like, moving away,
Just
like
saying, okay,
not
and-
dealing with it, and
Yeah.
then just kind of like shutting down in relationship to it. I'm fine with what this woman has done. Moving towards would be saying, yeah, you're right. You're the best mother ever. I should learn from you, and sort of placating. But that's not really how you feel. And moving against is like,
Girl.
oh, bitch,
Yeah.
what are you trying to do? And how dare you
Calling you
shame
out.
me?
Right.
You need to be worried about your own children. This is what we say on reality TV. Moving against. And so these are the fight, flight, or freeze responses. So shame and trauma function in very much the same way. Very much the same way. Knowing this as an actor, it's gold because these are the moments that we can craft a moment
use it.
using this. Right, this is a character in shame right now. What is she going to do? The active thing is to move against. Right, but then it might not be in the character for the person to do that, and so maybe they move away. And so there's a shut. What is the
cool?
How do we portray shutting down, and what does that begin to look like?
Totally.
Because we might have to
actually
do that.
Perform it.
Yeah, we might have to do that for a character.
Cool.
So it's really interesting. And so I think we have to become sort of students of human behavior, and there's always something. And I think for me as an artist, it's like, and part of it is about like not having anything have power over me. But then like sometimes something comes up and it's just time to address it. And I think for the artist, maybe for the human being too, what is getting in the way today of me being fully free? Is there something owning me? And is there something that if someone found it out about me, that would send me into a tailspin?
Yeah.
And if there is that thing, that's the thing I need to like reckon with right now. That is what I must reckon with, and like go through a process. Probably around like speaking it, because shame does not like to have words wrapped around it. When we speak shame, and it's greeted with empathy, it dissipates 85%. And so it's so important to like speak the shame to someone who's earned the right to hear our story, right? So we can't just go therapy or a good friend or sponsor, whatever it is
trusted
you're
acting
doing.
class, perhaps.
Yeah, a trusted acting class, and making sure creating a safe space in an acting class. Brad did that so beautifully, so that you can not be re-traumatized, because like when shame comes up and it's not greeted with empathy, we can be re-traumatized or go further into the shame if it's greeted with like more shame.
Yeah, it's very easy to. I love this idea that you said earlier about like you have to be gentle in approaching those things.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of this conversation, like I love that you're contextualizing this as like acting is so great, it's so fun, it's so it can be very emotionally healing or emotionally fulfilling, but this is like a cautionary tale interview where like you have to be careful.
Well, acting is actually, I'm very careful. My teachers remind me this all the time, that acting is actually not about fixing it. Acting is not therapy. No. Acting is about using it. And so the work, once we've brought it up and used it, is to not have it take us out. So that when the director says cut, that I'm not still wanting to commit suicide.
Sobbing uncontrollably.
Or whatever. Yeah. I think like when season 5, when I was in solitary, and because there's a moment when where I try to kill myself.
Oh yeah.
And that's what happens with
you just
people
said
in solitary.
Yourself, and you're not talking in the third person, you're talking in the first person right now.
Well, that's what it is, sweetie.
That's what it is. I know.
And,
it's great.
And so then my job is to go to a place in my life where I wanted to kill myself, and there have been moments,
and you got to use it, and you can't re-traumatize yourself.
And well, you kind of do have to as an actor. You do in the scene. You do need to be traumatized. But when the director says cut, how do you get out of it?
Yeah.
How do I get out of it in a place? And I'm so grateful that I had a great therapist at the time that I could go to and say like all this stuff I had to use for this for this work, and I'm having, some feelings right now that I might, and so then it's not. The tricky thing is that it's not real, but it is, because it has to be real for you as the actor, because it needs to be real. And so I don't know. I mean, I'm not.
It has to. It's a very fine line to walk.
It's very fine, and the brilliant thing, and also the scary thing about the nervous system. The brilliant thing for the actor is that the nervous system does not know that a trauma happened 20 years ago.
Totally.
So once triggered, the nervous system experiences the trauma as if it's happening right now. That's great for the actor because you can just be in the moment and use it.
During the take.
However, when the director said cut and you're done for the day and you don't need to do it again tomorrow, then how do you get the nervous system back on track?
Yeah.
And there's specific somatic things with their help now skills that get you in to the moment of feeling your feet on the floor, hearing a sound. There's smells that you can do to ground yourself in the moment. Resourcing is a big thing in somatic work. But sometimes when I'm finding the past several weeks that it's been hard to use those resources. Sometimes the nervous system is so overwhelmed that resourcing becomes really hard. And then it's just sometimes it's a help now skill. It's about something. And then kind of getting into a space of this is not real and trying to take yourself out of. And the big thing about somatic work is both and. So, these feelings of these suicidal ideations can coexist with resources that are uplifting and beautiful and awesome in the body, specifically in the body. So it's about both and. When I go to my therapist and I'm feeling anxious today, and she's like, where do you feel that in your body most? So it's all about the body.
Very, very
and
physical.
Then so we get clear about where I feel the anxiety most in my body. Right today, in this moment, I'm feeling it all through. I'm feeling it in my stomach and my gut. It's coming up through my chest and in my throat. All through here is where I feel it the most. And then she would ask me, where do you feel it less? Where is it less, or where is it positive or neutral in your body specifically? And in this moment, it's in my ankles. My calves are feeling kind of neutral. No, I wouldn't say positive, but neutral. And so then she would invite me to focus my energy on my ankles and on my calves, on the neutral or the positive. And so then I kind of focus my energy there for a minute. I'm doing that right now. And as I continue to do that, I swear to you, the anxiety that was coming up all through here, it's still there, but it's just it's less.
Yeah.
It's less.
It's super physiological.
It's less. And the great thing about that for actors, it's so weird because I really am in therapy to heal myself. I'm not in there. But to manage all the things that you have to bring up as an actor, it's kind of crucial. And all the things that come up when you begin to have a career that takes off a little bit too, that's a whole other thing.
There's a lot
but
of
the last
pressure,
thing I'll say about that is that the great thing about the both and of the somatic work is that the in our bodies, this anxiety can coexist with something that's neutral or positive. And so then when the director says cut and he comes over and needs to give you an adjustment, and you're able to hear the adjustment and not be in it's still there, but then it can also you can turn it down a little bit.
It's like
you can turn it down a little bit. It's almost like the volume that you can turn up or down on whatever the sensation is.
You're still acknowledging that it's there. It's turning
and then, but you don't want to turn it down too much because there's another take, and then you got to turn it up a little bit.
Wow.
And so that is. I'm so glad. Honestly, I'm feeling better as I talk about this.
Good.
Because I'm thinking about the neutral and positive in my body right now.
It's a skill. It's a skill you got to learn for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And it sounds like that's very, very helpful, specifically with on-camera acting. An emotional scene.
Ay, girl.
It was
I am so curious to see how this is going to turn out.
I know.
Sometimes when I go on my little romps and I get really Laverne and really I'm well, is anyone going to follow this? I would love people to comment or people comment. Do people comment?
Sure.
I haven't noticed. Are you following this?
Can you get some feedback? No, I know, because this was psychologically deep and technically deep, which is exactly what I want. This is really everything. Good. But to wrap up, that's always it's key to ask for the what is your advice to working actors? Having said all of what you just said about You got to expose the wounds. You got to get down to the layers of the bean dip and then find the tricks to add on the other layers. Like, what about like doing it? What about the aspiring actors, the early career actors? Like, do you have a message of hope, maybe?
Oh, I have a lot of things to say to young actors. I think the big thing, what I've learned in the 6 years since my career sort of took off, I guess, is that my career would not have taken off if I wasn't emotionally prepared to handle it. I don't believe that God, higher power, universe, whatever you want to call it, gives you more than you can handle. Certainly we see child actors who, become famous and they obviously can't handle it. Yeah. But I think that like doing the work, the foundational work, Brad Calcaterra calls it the foundational work to prepare yourself for people being critical of you, people like just attention, just a lot of being. And I don't know if there's anything that can fully prepare you, but doing the foundational work of working through and healing shame, and because that piece, because shame will come up. The second someone says a negative comment, the second someone calls you fat or ugly or impugns something about you, that can be really debilitating and devastating. And then I think too, working on yourself psychologically and emotionally so that, and Brad talks about this a lot. Go to Brad Calcaterra in New York. If you're in New York, go train with Brad. Because one of Brad's, a Bradism is that an adjustment is not a judgment.
Okay.
An adjustment is not a judgment. And so then even, sometimes because we as actors bring up a lot of stuff and so we're raw on set, sometimes, and then a director will say something and we're taking everything personally because we need to take everything personally as actors. But from the director, no. So in the scene, yes, but from the director, no. And so getting into that space where you are really taking care of yourself psychologically and emotionally, that the work... You have to, if you want to be an artist and an actor, I believe, you have to do a deep dive with yourself and you have to find a way to take care of all of this stuff. And some people don't have as much trauma as I have, and some people have more trauma than I've had. Yeah. And so finding a way to take care of that so that you can hold space for that with a career is crucial. And then I think too that you train, that you understand, that you train as much as possible, and hopefully find really great teachers and be committed to the process. If you must love it, if you don't love it, you should do something else because it's not worth it. Yeah. Because it took me. I moved to New York in 1993, and I thought I would be a superstar in 2-3 years tops. Yes. And my breakout moment happened 20 years later. Right. 20 years later.
I mean, you got to manifest it, but you also you
and I did, but I do my gratitude list in the morning. I do my manifestations. Lovely. But it was about God's time, not my time, and I was not ready a minute before it happened. And so then it's like, are you willing? Can you wait 20 years? Do you have that black that don't crack? Or are you going to be okay with however your black is cracked or whatever, your white is cracked or whatever, being okay with that and using that too.
Whatever that means for you.
On screens, because it really is all beautiful, right? So that you're okay with whatever, with how long it might take for you, that your journey is different. And then are you going to be okay? What are your goals? Do you really want to act and be an actor and tell stories? And is there a sense of what is the purpose and service too that is bigger than you? Because I think honestly, a huge reason why I believe the reason I probably got some quote unquote success when it happened was because Sophia was necessary. The voice that I had that was part of a larger trans community was necessary in the world at the time. Right. There was a lot of service that needed to be done. None of this has been about me. Right. Even though I have to take care of myself and mind myself and excavate myself, that ultimately it's about something bigger than me. And so then, as egotistical and as self-absorbed as most of us are as actors, and I'm copying to that, what is the service? What is the bigger reason why we're doing this in a way that really is selfless, that really is about something that's bigger than that's connected to something bigger, and really connecting with that. I think that's crucial.
That's
and
really
then
useful too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have a lot more to say, obviously. But it seems like we should just maybe wrap it up here, because this could go on forever. How long have we been talking?
No, I know. It's been over an hour.
Okay.
Thank you so much for bearing your soul to me. I really, really appreciate it. Especially on, like you said, there are good days and bad days.
But I showed up. Showing up is half the...
You know what? Use it.
Half the thing. What is someone says showing up is half the 50% or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I showed up today.
Thank you.
Thank you, darling.
In the Envelope, an awards podcast, is recorded at Lotus Productions, Hyperbolic Audio, and Big Yellow Duck in New York City, and Soundbox LA, Mark Grouse Studios, and Buzzies in Los Angeles. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, tweet us at In the Envelope, leave a review. We want to hear from you. Visit Backstage.com for more content and resources for working artists, and don't forget, you can subscribe to Backstage with a free trial by using the code ENVELOPE at checkout. Thanks as always to podcast producer Wiz, Jamie Muffett. You can follow him on Twitter at Jamie Music NYC. You can follow me, Jack Smart, on Twitter at Jack Smart Writes. Thank you to the team at Backstage, the most trusted name in casting: Mark Stinson, Samantha Sherlock, Francis Ramos, Caitlin Watkins, and especially should-be Oscar nominee Casey Howe. Thanks for listening.